Dear colleagues, thanks for taking the time to attend this keynote address at the conference of the ISCAR Society. I would like to start by expressing my gratitude to the Conference Scientific Committee for this invitation. I am a scholar who strongly identifies with the cultural historical activity theory, and therefore with this conference. And I'm also a scholar that has attempted to contribute to this family of approaches since 24 years. So this is, for me, a great honor. In this presentation, I will express my own views, but I wish to acknowledge all of those who have made and are making this research possible. First, RESET research team in the Faculty of Education and Culture at Tampere University, Finland. As Martin said, RESET stands for Research Engagement in Sustainable and Equitable Transformations. And you can find more information on the website. Also, I wish to acknowledge the numerous stakeholders and practitioners with whom RESET is working since 2018 on this research that I will be presenting. Last but not least, I wish to acknowledge all colleagues, senior and junior, from different parts of the world, with whom we meet regularly online since 2000, especially. In fact, since this difficult year, the extremely valuable discussions we are having regularly in our seminars and events make a real difference. I have discovered together with them, together with you all, what I call the responsibility of optimism. I hope that in this keynote, I will be able to convey at least a glimpse of the energy and powerful insights that animate our conversations online. When saying this, my thoughts are particularly with two colleagues, two scholars representing together and at the same time the history and the future of ISCAR in so many ways. Bert van Ers from Free University in Amsterdam, and Maria Spante from University West in Sweden. I dedicate this keynote to them, wishing them well, and wishing that they will be joining us again soon. As a last point before starting this presentation, I would like to invite you to send comments, questions, especially in writing, which is my favorite way of communicating, even if I know I am very slow with my responses. But I never give up. Actually, eventually you will receive an answer. We will also have a little time to exchange during the rest of the conference, so you are welcome to come to me and to talk. So you are most welcome to use this address to be in touch with me directly. So let's begin from the title. The first part of it reflects the very research agenda of RESET. Our team is working to contribute at least, with a theory of transformative agency to the current generation of works in cultural historical activity theory. This is our priority. The subtitle reflects the conceptual work we are doing on what we call enacted utopias. The theory of transformative agency postulates that the urgency of addressing the acute challenges of our time make it necessary to learn to recognize and support with viable pedagogical tools sustained collective efforts that are already in the making and already making a difference as we speak. We call this enacted utopias. Our societies, all our societies, are full of this, but we don't see them. We don't know how to recognize them, let alone how we can support them. Building on Eric Olin Wright's sociology of real utopia, the emphasis on enactment is a reminder of the vulnerability of equitable and sustainable ways of living, producing, and organizing. The solutions to the mess in which we manage to put our planet are already there. We know what to do. Furthermore, many have been implementing these solutions already for decades. We need to be able to recognize that these utopias are being enacted as we speak. And a central responsibility for the learning sciences is precisely to account for the collective learning and agency that makes these utopias real. Furthermore, the learning sciences are uniquely positioned to devise viable pedagogical tools to sustain these collective efforts and to bring them together across sectoral, organizational, and hierarchical divides. This is why enactment is in the subtitle. But what about the rest? Beyond classic utopianism. What is this lady talking about today? Boring. I really would like to ask you a little bit of attention, a little bit of focus, just because, you know, have pity for me that didn't sleep for 2 nights to write this, for instance. In January this year, our colleagues from the ARA SIG on cultural historical theorizing invited me to discuss my views on utopias in one of the SIG events. This gave me the opportunity to catch up and to relate to recent discussions on dream, utopia, and speculative design. This theme has been addressed in the SIG and also has led to an interesting special issue in the Journal of the Learning Sciences. Now, this keynote elaborates on the initial thoughts I had the opportunity to share in this SIG event. So, I am taking this opportunity to continue the conversation and to expand it to you all. In the context of this SIG event, I raised a concern that discussions on dream, utopia, and speculative design remain detached from the brave yet fragile hands-on work of actually enacting utopias of equity and sustainability. The risk is, in fact, that despite our best intentions, academic inquiries might reinstate unconsequential classic utopianism. So I will talk a little bit about that. So, what I will do in the following is to build an argument to convey this. Okay. The centrality of the theory of transformative agency by double stimulation and its notion, which is related to this theory, of enacted utopia for the development of fourth-generation culture-historical activity theory. I will focus in particular on how the notion of enacted utopia has been challenging TADS, on how this is leading to new openings also in the theory with the help of Freire's work and Gramsci work. More specifically, I will be posing and attempting at answering the following questions, the following sets of questions. How do enacted utopias look like? How do they relate to TAD's framework? And how enacted utopias further challenge this framework? Furthermore, in which ways and to which extent chat research support enacted utopias, can support enacted utopias? I will try to respond to these sets of questions by following two steps. First, I will give an overview of the TADS framework. What is TADS, how this framework developed over the years, how enactment represents a red thread of this development and continues triggering this development more recently by means of the notion precisely of enacted utopias. And second, I will proceed by arguing that there is a risk of reinstating some aspects, at least, of classic utopianism in recent discussions on dream, utopia, and speculative design. I will also argue for the utility of TADS in the face of these risks, for the kind of transformations educational and organizational systems urgently need. And then I will conclude with posing a number of challenges, actually one main challenge among many, that prompts TAD's theory to further develop. So, let's start. What is transformative agency by double stimulation? TADS is intrinsically a power-sensitive conceptualization of agency. This perspective is sensitive to understanding power also as a productive, emancipatory force, which, despite being often hidden, unrecognized, and suppressed, is nevertheless generated in everyday struggles. TADS highlight the unfolding of transformative agency as a process. In the book with the Nick, we call it motion. These dynamics are triggered by the ways in which historical contradictions are experienced when we pursue what matters in our activities. We call these motives. And they are sustained by the use of cultural means and artifacts. We call this mediation. The use and development of artifacts as auxiliary and second stimuli help individuals and collectives to gain control of their activities and lives. Of course, it's not absolute control. It's some degree of control. Well, this has not come out of the blue. No. A long journey had led to this definition. And I am indebted to Anne Edwards' work and the collaboration with Nick Hopwood for this. A turning point for me, and perhaps also a turning point for chat, the future will tell, was the realization of the contents of one specific text. This one. What this text conveys led to this representation of the process of the unfolding of TADs. The model then was tested in quasi-experimental settings that go for the name, under the name of waiting experiments, using the formulation of Vygotsky himself after Levin. And also a number of formative interventions. And here I would like to acknowledge, in particular, the contribution and the collaboration with Italian activity theorist Daniele Morselli and the Chinese activity theorist Ge Wei. Now, let me explain a little bit the reason why this text of Vygotsky was a turning point, at least in my understanding of transformative agency. In several of my early works, back in the early 2000s, I had been exploring the dynamics of experiencing when individuals and collectives face conflicts of motives. In Vassiliuk's sense of the word, critical conflicts. In this specific text, Vygotsky describes the critical role conflicts of motives may play in the formation of volitional action. They are instances of paralysis of the will that second stimuli, mediating artifacts, may help overcome. By then, I was already more or less in Leontievian and Davidovian traditions. I was talking today with colleagues in the session organized by Martin, highlighting that this is a long journey, a life journey. After all, we are dealing with approaches that stem from 1 century ago and are being continuously developed. So you never end actually discovering things in this domain. But I was saying that by then I was already quite versed in these traditions, and this led me to connect what I was discovering with the TADs with the theory of responsive learning. It became therefore clear over time that conflicts of motives are actually experienced historical contradictions. They are history in us, struggling in our stomach. And this may block transformative agency in everyday activities. We all face this type of experiences, which are pervasive and also exacerbated under capitalism. But these were also exciting years. Exciting and disorienting years. These are some of the pictures from the quasi-experimental settings with individuals and collectives. We did series of experiments with the individuals and with the collectives. But up to 2018, I was quite confused. I wanted to be able to show what chat has to do with the major collective transformations. And this would be the real test for this framework. Hopwood and Gottschalk's work on double stimulation in service of families with children at risk gave me hope that I might myself identify a societal challenge which would allow me to test this framework and investigate larger-scale societal transformation more closely. In fact, I was extremely jealous of what he was doing with the tides. And this happened during this turning point, this second turning point actually happened almost paradoxically during a sabbatical period at Berkeley. A stay that was made possible by the support and generosity of Chris Gutierrez. It was during this period, there in Berkeley, that I found what I was looking for. I discovered there the enacted utopia of Finnish Housing First toward the eradication of homelessness. As I said, this was a turning point. The local and international press were celebrating the success of a decade of concerted and unprecedented efforts to give a home and tailored support to each single person living through homelessness or at least risk of becoming homeless. And this was a celebrated success. BBC, The Guardian, European Union, everything. I told myself, could this actually be a real utopia I can document throughout a decade of successful development, going back in the 60s with activism in Finland? It was my dream come true. But the ethnographic fieldwork almost immediately made it clear that it was not that simple. The Finnish Housing First strategy became a distinctive example of a utopia in the process of being enacted, but also in the midst of of struggles and contradictions in the pursuit of its object of activity. And what it is, its object of activity? It's this. Permanently housing vulnerable people living in the streets or at risk of becoming homeless. That's it. I found it. The birth of Reset Agenda on fourth generation chat as a specific date and a specific time. It was during the 10th RWL conference at Rhodes University, South Africa. Reset Agenda on Chat 4G consists in inquiries of enacted utopias as instances of transformative agency and includes co-participation, co-participatory collaboration with practitioners and political actors. Yeah, they are human beings, too. You just need to know how to approach them with good arguments. And usually the good arguments are those that mobilize the civil society. And you might discover that they are also short of ideas sometimes. They need a little help from their friends. The discussions during the conference with Charles Chikunda, Hela Lotsisitka, Mutitswa Mukute, Victor Tichaona Pasanai had a serious impact on this work for the extraordinary inspiration and power of the insights from these colleagues and their own work. This carried me a long way during the implementation of this research agenda up to today and beyond, I hope. Since 2018, Reset has been building such a long-term partnership with stakeholders and practitioners committed to eradicate homelessness in Finland. These are some of the change laboratories that we carried out with these stakeholders and practitioners. These practitioners represent a wide range of sectors and organizations at the frontline, city, and national levels. The first change laboratory was deliberately initiated in the most turbulent housing unit in the entire country. As the participatory analysis and design evolved in this context, echoes of the process at the frontline level, in this specific oral place, had reached also beyond the local circumstances, the city level and the national level. So we started from here, and this is how it proceeded. At the beginning, District 2 and 3 didn't even want to talk to us. These levels were not keen to work with us at the beginning. The TADS framework has then been heavily mobilized and tested for fostering the collective transformative agency needed in the pursuit of expansive learning within and across these change laboratories and beyond after the completion of these change laboratories up to today. By the way, Reset has publicly committed to stay on board no matter what, till there will be even one homeless person still left in Finland. They are not appropriate words to acknowledge the value of the contribution of Annalisa Sannino and Yrjö Engström in this exhausting endeavor, carried out mostly without a penny of external funding. TADS has been tested with similar developments also in recent change laboratories conducted by Maria Spante on homelessness in Sweden. And also in a research, TADS movements from local change laboratories are seen opening up transformative prospects across hierarchical levels. Okay. Remember, we started from here. Huh? This is more or less what we have been doing so far, if you have been paying attention. Sorry. After all, I am the new president. I can ask you to listen for once. Don't trust on this. Yeah. No, never, 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 never. It's impossible. I can only act as a Napolitan. Don't know what is better. Okay. Where was I? Done. Then, second step. There is a risk of reinstating some aspects of classic utopianism I mentioned at the beginning. I refer to the discussion of speculative design, which has taken place in the chat, in the Culture Historical Theorizing SIG at ARA, and in a recent issue of the Journal of the Learning Sciences. So what does TADS bring to these discussions? This is what I really would like to share with you by pursuing this second step in my argument. So what I will go through is these points. There is a risk of reinstating some aspects of classic utopianism in the recent discussions on dream, utopia, speculative design. TADS may be useful in the face of these risks for the kind of transformations educational and organizational systems urgently need. But there are also challenges that enacted utopias pose to TADS And I will tell what this might be and also how they might be faced. But one thing at a time. Let's start defining what is this speculative design for those who have not yet been encountering this. This is a practical approach focused on the future by means of critical design proposals. Two prominent names in this field are Anthony Dunne and Fiona Raby from the New School in New York. The very term speculative design was made known by the two design scholars who wanted to take distance from the commercially driven design proposals to foster design that tackles crucial issues for the future. A key area of interest pertains to future consequences and implications of science, technology, and human beings interacting with one another. Their work produces provocative future design scenarios where technology and design implications are accentuated. They are famous for the subversive and irreverent nature of their designs. In this respect, in fact, their designs have a similar function that mirror data have in change laboratories. We call them also first stimuli in TAD's jargon. When it comes to using them for triggering discussions that questions the status quo, and within a future-oriented and agency formation perspective. However, if we look at the traditional speculative design, a utopian perspective against this background appears to build on three main principles of speculative design. And I mentioned the three of them: dream, future, and technology. Now, my view here is that this is not enough today with the pressures in the world we live in, and especially looking at what are the mainstream orientations to these three elements. But most importantly, speculative design is in fact not new. And it may be understood as an instantiation of the classic utopianism by utopian socialists such as Charles Fourier, Henri de Saint-Simon, and we cannot disregard in chat that this approach to utopia was already object of criticism by Karl Marx. Oh, Karl Marx also can be wrong. Let's leave a look at it. Okay. Let's look at two examples. The first is the case from the south of Italy, the place I come from. It's not where I was born, but not far away. Campomaggiore. This is a town originally built in 1741 in the province of Potenza, the provincial capital of one of the southernmost regions in Italy. Ever since its beginning, and for more than a century, the city distinguished itself as an extremely progressive and technologically oriented settlement. A train station, imagine a train station, was built there, for instance, in what historically was, and unfortunately continues to be, one of the poorest regions in the country. And for those who are not familiar with the history of the south of Italy, this is an area in the world which has been subject to several waves of colonization and which forced emigration among the locals. So a train station and productive activity in such an area were really significant. Campomaggiore, however, was destroyed by a landslide in 1885, and now it's a ghost city. A recent commemorative local article recollecting the events of the landslide reads, Campomaggiore, built through years of effort, was destroyed, and with it, the ambitious project born a century earlier, the result of dedication and study determined by the desire to improve the social and living conditions of the time was shattered. However, Campomaggiore still lives today in a dream. This example is particularly eloquent in its reminder that inadequate scientific knowledge can lead to the building of a very fragile dream, like the one that collapsed because the soil was not suitable for this city. The nature may hit back because historically utopias of civilization interfere with nature. Utopias built on dreams may indeed perpetuate into posterity, but as dreams. This is the case of the town of Campomaggiore today, a dream nourished by means of tours and stories and recollections of a ghost city for tourism. Similarly to Campomaggiore, there is a second example from very far away from this Campomaggiore, and it is the most famous instantiation of classic utopianism from the 19th century, also considered as the most famous utopia ever, New Harmony. New Harmony was the dream come true of Robert Owen. He was an industrialist from Scotland who had strong ethical and political views about collaboration, equality, and society. And to this end, he purchased a whole new town in the US called New Harmony, and invited like-minded people to come in and create a utopian society. New Harmony lasted 2 years, and today is a ghost city and a touristic attraction exactly as Campomaggiore. Welcome to the club. So looking at these two examples, it is important not to forget that dreaming approaches to utopias also tend to be effectively put into use by politics of developmental initiatives that, while they are useful, while they are undeniably important, they unfortunately are not conscious of history, cultural heritage, and actually are not sustainable. So, acute needs are the main impetus of real and enacted utopias, and in that actually they, to an extent, fit the bill, these two. But this type of utopias cry for formative interventionist approaches to be detected, recognized, and supported. And in the time we live in this should actually be the priority, as there is no time to waste for sustaining the life on this planet. So strongly grounded utopias for equity and sustainability are built on history and are built on scientific evidence and must orient themselves toward ecologically viable technological perspectives which also transcend class and other divisions in the spirit of right, real utopias of alternatives to capitalism. How am I doing with the time?
15 minutes.
Oh, okay. Okay, how do we know that we are looking at an enacted utopia, if you see one? Perhaps these three questions can help us. At least they helped me. In retrospect, I think I would have been much less slow in counteracting the reaction of jealousy when I saw Nick Hopwood having this very nice topic, and I didn't have it. What tangible alternatives to capitalism is this dream animating? You can ask that. What historical and scientific evidence is there that there is local grounding and longevity of this alternative? So there are real circumstances that make it possible for this to survive. It's feasible. Okay? And 3, what evolving needs and contradictions are these alternatives struggling to respond to? Because this is one tad at time, the enactment of a utopia. So when mobilizing TADs, as in this presentation so far, it is clear that the pursuits of enacted utopias depend on the ability we, in the learning sciences and beyond, have to recognize them, the ability of sustaining them, and even protecting them from the influences of the dominant tendencies of the socio-economic system we live in. Tad's perspective of enacted utopia is that the utopias radically differ, these utopias radically differ from classic utopianism and classic speculative design in that they are squarely situated in open interactions and initiatives of the civil society with utopian processes struggling to find momentum through history within a perspective of longue durée. Now, since we don't have much time to waste to save our planet, perhaps we want to join forces with people who have already devoted their lives to these utopias. They're out there. They need our support. These utopias happens in gray areas of possibilities within the cracks that the contradictions of our daily activities in them inevitably open up. Sorry for my English, it's not my mother tongue. So, that is when the personal actually becomes political. To paraphrase what Carol Harnish famously stated in the women liberation movement in 1960s, but perhaps with the Carol Harnish, we could also start saying that the personal and the professional is political. And we see gray areas of possibilities in our workplaces on the daily basis that we could cultivate, alternatives from within. So, can enacted utopias be also supported by learning scientists? Yes! The answer is yes. And how? With a transformative activist stance. Yes! But enacted utopias may be also supported by learning scientists with their critical design experiments, their formative interventions, their learning labs, their change labs, their teaching experiments, their conceptual play world, and more. And this is the core. This is the core on which we can build cohesion, solidarity, respect across our differences at ISCAR and beyond. And together with societal actors who are devoting their lives to these utopias in their specific local, global circumstances and across their own differences. So let's stay calm, focused, Let's stick to one another. Let's keep all of us, our eyes on the prize. The prize being ISCAR, commoning activity, for instance, to use the term of our colleagues at the Environmental Learning Research Center in South Africa. Okay, we are getting there, then we are free, we can chat, we can dance, we can eat, we can rest. So, this is what is at the core too. How does this transformative stance translate into action? And this is why learning scientists exist in 2024. And this is also what chat, culture historical theorizing, can give at its best. So, by means of which pedagogical instruments we can operate, to which actual disruptive and constructive consequences, both in science, but also in the world. So, 2 steps, remember, we are getting there. We are getting there. One more little point. So all this starts making sense to me, but it also challenges some of what has been done before in TAD's early days, back in the 2000s. And one of these challenges, one of the major shortcomings to address is class division. Ever heard about this class division, Annalisa? Many colleagues from ISCAR have been telling this. And I've been telling them, it's yet not time. I don't have the tools for that. Now perhaps I do. Okay. Okay, so, how to do this? Well, the fact is that enacted utopias, as we have established so far, bring in a perspective of longue durée, which is much wider and more complex that we can capture in formative interventions. Yet I said before that we carry history and historical struggles in our body, in our stomach. So it's at the same time close and distant in a very contradictory manner, but we are in the middle of it. So this is why this challenge has to be addressed. This is, in fact, this concern is leading to a new opening in the theory of TADs, with the help, I think, possibly, of Freire's and Gramsci's work. These works can be fruitful to develop a more robust understanding of TAD's enacted utopias approach. And briefly, I tell you how. So, from what I presented, you have heard about these struggles of the will. With regard to Freire, the work of Fernanda Liberali has been extremely useful to bring about the notion of inedito via vel from the pedagogy of the oppressed. I am indebted to Dr. Monica Lemos, Professor Marco Querol, for the time they took in the past few days to answer questions I had on this concept in Portuguese. And in particular, I want to acknowledge extensive discussions we had both on Freire and on Gramsci with Dr. Felipe Lopez during the Reset Cradle online seminars, then during his stay in both Tampere and in Helsinki, and during the period he was completing his dissertation in his visit. And also for his time during the past days and nights preparation of this keynote. Now, the context in which Freire uses the notion of inedito via vel is a discussion of limit situation. What is a limit situation? In fact, Anna Maria Freire gives an explanation of that. Limit situations imply the existence of those to whom, directly or indirectly, they serve the dominant, and those to whom things are denied, blocked, the oppressed. Limit situations present themselves to people as if they were crushing and historical determinants, leaving them with no alternative but to adapt. Hey, that's the feeling when we feel we are no more in control of the activities we live in. When we feel this heavy weight on our stomach, that we feel inferior, inadequate. And as a result, people don't transcend the limit situation and fail to discover or perceive beyond them and in relation to them the viable unheard of. The unprecedented possibilities that we might find in the cracks of the contradictions of our everyday, especially professional activities. Why? Because, well, because they connect directly to productive life. So if you want alternatives, you have to change productive activities. And then also politicians listen. So the notion of limit situation strongly resonates with the TAD's perspective of moving beyond the paralysis of the will. However, what this reading of Freire does is also something else. It urges TADs to open up to class struggles and what they mean for will formation. The link between TAD's notion of experienced conflict of motives, therefore, might be a relevant conceptual opening to start exploring class struggles. These openings to class struggles, to me, an Italian coming from the south, a terrona, as our colonizers' brothers from the north sometimes may still call us. Well, it's not possible not to think about the South Italian, Sardinian Antonio Gramsci and his major concept of hegemony. It is not rare to find uses of the Gramscian concept of hegemony, even in the learning sciences, but as if it was a universal notion which tends to lose its original historical and dialectical connotation and becomes a general term describing commonly accepted rules and power relations. Interesting. A term of hegemony devoid of power. We can achieve this with language. Where is Fernanda? Hegemony is not primarily a coercive power, but something that people give their consent to. This is pretty common, we know that. And at the same time, however, it involves the idea of marginalizing some groups and privileging others. Thus, hegemony becomes contradictorily produced and reproduced, hey, not only by the ruling class, but also by ourselves. But if you put in hegemony what it's supposed to be there, namely dialectic and contradictions, this opens up. If you take it as a universal concept, in everyday rhetorics, it's devoid of any power. So time may be mature today in chat to be able to carry out rigorous analysis of transformative agency formation by means of TADs, tracing and making visible the evolving contradictory struggles over hegemony. Now, very soon, close. I'm over time, I'm sorry. Okay. These were the questions I asked. I promised I would answer to them. This is an answer to this. We can assimilate lessons from cases such as Finnish Housing First. But that's not the only case. We have another case coming up. It's from the doctoral dissertation of Mattia Favaretto in Venice. He's working on expanding with the civil society for the future of Venice. Venice is disappearing, ladies and gentlemen. By coming up with suitable conceptual and pedagogical instruments in support of initiatives such as these utopias, and to the extent that an academic community, as an academic community, we learn to stand strong while facing the contradictions of the contemporary institutions of universities and capitalist tendencies in society at large. Takeaway message, this is my last slide, and then we are free for night. Enacted utopias do occur, but mostly they go unnoticed, and they remain unsupported in their struggles. Chat, self, including fourth generation, please. And also, with the help of TAD's framework, can recognize these enacted utopias, understand their dynamics of becoming, and develop ways to support them by formative interventions research in the learning sciences and beyond. Thank you.